Now, Sweden's ideals of equality between the sexes are being tested after it was revealed that an increasing number of public swimming pools are set to have women-only hours. It's supposedly to accommodate the growing Muslim population as Europe's migrant crisis continues. However, a probe's reportedly been launched into whether such initiatives discriminate against men. Let's bring in a couple of guests now to discuss this in more detail. We've got Dilly Hussain from the 5 Pillars British Muslim news website and Tori Bugle on the right of our screen. She's the founder of Mothers Against Radical Islam and Sharia. Welcome to both of you. Please feel free to discuss among yourselves as well. If we can keep it polite, that would be great. I suppose there's a couple of issues to discuss here. One of them is integration and another one is potential sexism. I want to start, if I can, with you, Dilly. What's your response to this and to what extent do you think European countries should be changing their ways in order to accommodate immigrants?
I think the issue of having separate swimming hours for females is not something that should be racialized or targeted toward a particular faith group. What you'll find is that comfort is something which is desirable by both sexes. So you'll find women and men of all faiths and none who may prefer to swim or do certain activities with the own sex. We shouldn't pander to these kind of arbitrary, subjective conception of gender equality.
But isn't it connected, though, directly to religion? Isn't this linked to the fact that in certain countries it's actually a legal requirement that men and women go swimming separately?
Yeah, that's a legal requirement for Muslim majority countries. I mean, if Europe wants to accommodate that, then that's their choice. And if they don't want to, then that's also their choice. What they shouldn't do is accommodate for it and then, exacerbate public opinion against a particular faith group or migrants.
Toni, what's your reaction?
I don't think that the public are exacerbating the problem at all. I think the problem's been exacerbated by the behaviour of immigrants that have targeted children and women in such a way that it's now caused men to also become victims because they're seen as being just as bad or capable of committing these crimes. There should be no segregation. Segregation.
Toni, what's that got to do with anything that we're supposed to be debating? What's that got anything to do with what we're talking about?
I didn't interrupt you. I was quite happy to sit and listen to you, Dilly. And I'm quite happy to have a rational, calm conversation with you. The majority of the crimes at the moment have been perpetrated through no fault of mine or yours, but by immigrants. These immigrants have come from Islamic countries. Now, when it comes to segregation, I believe the more segregation you have, the bigger the gap that you're going to have, the bigger the divide you're going to have between the communities. How do you then rectify the problems we've got within communities if we keep dividing them?
Now, Tony's bringing up the issue of allegations of sexual offences in pools. Now, actually, this changes that are happening in Sweden, as we understand, are actually happening just to accommodate the demand for it, as opposed to claims of offences. What do you feel about just the principle of it, though, Toni? A few hours set aside for women swimmers. Possibly many European women would actually enjoy that too. Surely
Absolutely.
That can't be a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Look, I've lived in England all my life, born and bred here, and I've gone swimming with my children, I've gone swimming with my male friends, I've gone swimming with my non-male friends, I've gone swimming full stop. It is a social entertainment thing that actually...
Okay. So swimming is social entertainment now, is it? When does swimming become social entertainment for the others? Look, you can't have an arbitrary conception of gender equality. You can't have an arbitrary conception. Why don't you have mixed cubicles for children at schools? Why don't you have mixed cubicles at hospitals? Why don't you have mixed changing rooms? You can't pick and choose when you want to champion gender equality.
We're not talking about people being naked in front of each other. They go into a changing room, they wear a bathing suit. They are not naked.
You can't pick and choose when you want to champion gender equality. And I want to ask you one simple thing.
You cannot compare.
Give me one statistic. Give me one statistic where majority of the crimes in England or Europe have been committed by migrants. One statistic, please. Official statistic,
where would you like to start? We can start with Rotherham if you like.
Okay, no, but that's a scandal. We're talking about an official statistic.
Okay, guys, it's a very big topic of conversation. I want to kind of stay on topic here. So, Dilly, I want to come to you because Toni did talk about accusations of sexual offences in pools. There have been incidents like this. Indeed, it has got to the extent where in Sweden they're putting out undercover officers at pools because of a rising number of complaints. So, can you see that there's a potential problem here that some of the immigrants coming in don't seem to know how to behave in Europe?
I think this kind of language in kind of animalizing and dehumanizing migrants or people of another race or culture is very, very counterproductive and has serious racist undertones. And obviously, Toni will know everything about that. But the issue here is that we need to be very careful that we treat crimes as crimes. That we don't racialize crimes. That we don't attribute crimes to specific faith or race groups.
But Dilly, we've got a mayor of a town in Saxony, Germany, saying that they're getting greater numbers of complaints from the swimming pools. It's happening in Sweden as well. I mean, surely those are facts. Is this a case of they're not used to being in these situations, the immigrants? If they're from an Islamic country, they're not used to being in a scenario where they're in a pool with women and don't know how to behave?
No, but you're going on as if like groping or sexual crimes don't happen with people from the host nation. This is absolutely absurd. I mean, if crimes are taking place, let the law enforcement agencies and the vetted, hired security guards of those premises to look after it. Don't racialize crimes. Don't attribute crimes to a particular faith group. A crime is a crime. Deal with it as a crime.
Because obviously you don't want to hear an opposite opinion, because an opposite opinion clearly offends your delicate nature. The truth of it is this: you use the word racist. It's far from it, and quite frankly, I won't even rise to the fact that you lowered yourself to use that word. Rahil Raza, she's a Muslim woman. I interviewed her a couple of nights ago. We now intend to work together. I give support to Muslim women who I take into my home because they fear from being beaten or attacked within their own family communities. Apostate.
Is that specific to just to Muslim or Asian women? This is what I mean by racializing crime.
No, unfortunately.
And please don't, throw labels about what I stoop down to accusing you of racism. English Democrats and your organisations.
Guys, again, I want us to stay on topic here now, without bringing race into it too much. But I think this is about integration. So I want to ask each of you in turn. We'll start with you first, Toni. How much are European lifestyles being altered by the influx of migrants?
It's been altered immensely to the point where people don't feel safe anymore. I think that there is a real security issue here. I understand why people are afraid. I understand why not just the people who are born and bred here, but people who have come here don't feel safe anymore. That includes many of the Muslim women that I give support to that don't feel safe here anymore. Now, if that's the feeling in the UK, I imagine that's the feeling in Cologne. I imagine it's the feeling in Sweden. When you get the likes of the night of New Year's Eve in Cologne, I'm sorry, what you're seeing is enforced Sharia. And I believe that is what you are seeing with the swimming pools.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
I'm not crazy. It's a statement of...
Absolutely crazy.
I support that because Dilly wants Sharia. He wants to live his life, which is fine. I have no problem with you living your life by Sharia. But living in a country where it's an Islamic country, this is not an Islamic country. Neither is Sweden, which was and has been for a long time one of the most liberal countries you could ever imagine. And suddenly we're having to make all these exceptions. And actually, the likes of Rahil Raza would not advocate it at all.
I want to cross over to Dilly now. To what extent do you think Europe's changing to accommodate the immigrant influx? And is it changing Europe for the better or for the worse?
I think there's three brief points I want to drive home to your viewers today. First and foremost, I think Muslim women, whether they are migrants or whether they're born in Europe, they're fearing the attack of Islamophobia, which is on the rise in Europe, more than attacks from alleged attacks from migrants. Secondly, what happened in New Year's Eve in Cologne, as the facts are that out of 90 men that were arrested for what happened in New Year's Eve in Cologne, only 5 of them were migrants. 85 or so were born white German men, Toni. thirdly, I
I
think we need to differentiate between assimilation and integration. Integration is a two-way thing. It's where the host nation and the new arrivals have to understand each other and come to a common ground and live peacefully in coexistence. Forced assimilation is something that goes against the very nature of the secular liberal state, a state which claims to differentiate between the private and the public realm of religion, yet wants to impose such policies on migrants and people of faith.
Because obviously you don't actually want to hear a reply. You see, I actually agree with you, believe it or not. I agree with you. We do need to work on integration. We do. 100%.
It's a two-way thing, Toni, is right.
I totally agree. Let me finish. Please don't talk over me.
Two ways. It's not one way. Forced assimilation goes against the very founding principles of a secular liberal democracy.
Guys, I'm glad that you agree on something here, and that brings me on to Germany, because it's set to pass its first ever integration bill aimed at boosting integration, preventing the creation of ghettos. So the German government sees that there is an issue there. What do you both think about this? First to you, Dilly. Do you think this is a good idea?
I mean, look, as I mentioned in my previous statement there, you know, we have to differentiate between integration and forced assimilation. And the way I have read the integration bill of Germany, which I discussed on RT a couple of months ago, is that you cannot expect mosques and attendees of mosques to do their prayers in German language when the prayer is supposed to be done in Arabic. If we're talking about imams and sermons being delivered in German or English, that's absolutely fine. And I believe majority of mosques in Europe have got imams are giving sermons in that respective language. What you can't force any particular faith or race group to do is to assimilate to a set of values, an arbitrary set of values, which is being defined by who? We cannot continue changing goalposts of when we want to champion liberalism, when we want to champion free speech, when we want to champion tolerance.
I want to cross to Toni and get her response now. Toni, what do you say to that? How do you encourage integration without forcing people into doing things?
I would encourage it by actually getting behind the people like Taj Hagi, who is a British imam. And actually, I have immense respect for the man, immense respect. Rahil Raza, immense respect. Shireen Kadozi, these are Muslim people who I have the utmost respect for. But actually, it's not about forced assimilation. It's about the fact that there is a fear. And if we do not find ways of breaking down those barriers, that fear will get greater. And whilst Dilly wants to keep bringing it back to something where he's so offended or the Muslim community are offended, well, do you know what? I'm non-Muslim, I'm atheist, and I'm offended. I'm offended at the fact that you find the fact that people want to work together so offensive.
When did I say that, Toni? Why are you putting words in my mouth, Toni? Calm down, come on.
Because you...
Let's have a rational debate here. Let's not put words in each other's mouth.
But you kept talking over me, Dilly, and actually...
I want to get a final statement from you both, if I can. Can I come to you first, Dilly? What is the future here for Europe and this influx, and it's still an influx of immigrants? What's the way forward to get integration? That's what everybody wants. How do we get it?
Look, at the end of the day, Europe as a continent which prides itself on liberal values, it needs to live up to that, and it needs to find a way to accommodate newcomers to their countries. You have to also appreciate that many of the war zones that they're escaping, that European countries themselves had a hand to play in those. What I'm trying to say is integration is a two-way thing. The host nation and the newcomers have to put an effort in to find a common ground to peacefully coexist. What doesn't help is this worrying, alarming shift of the entire continent towards the right and the rhetoric and the ideology of Toni, respectfully. That's what's worrying. We cannot have an us and them mentality. We cannot force people to accept.
And Toni, final statement from you. How does Europe go forward in this situation?
The way to go forward, actually, is first of all, he wants to criticise me. He shared a platform with Hatham al-Haddad, who thinks there's a correct way of performing female genital mutilation. I will work with people like Rahil Raza. I will, Shireen, don't interrupt me. Do not interrupt me. I respectfully listened. Now, I will work with Rahil. I will work with Shireen Kadozi. I will work with Taj Hagi. I will do that because they are the true face of people who want integration and not separation, and certainly not segregation, where these things can be allowed to be ignored. So I will work with them, and that is my final word on it. But I have nothing against you, Dilly, as a person. I'm sure you're an absolute delight to meet.
Likewise, Tony.
Guys, some disagreements, but nice to see some common ground there as well. Thank you so much for coming on RT. On the left, Dilly Hussain from 5 Pillars, British Muslim news website. On the right, Tori Bugle, founder of Mothers Against Radical Islam and Sharia. Many thanks.
You're welcome.